Lord Tremendous here. Got another book review here for you. And this one is called Hyperion's Shield. I think I'm saying that right. Hyperion. I'm sure you could throw some sort of slang on it and make it sound even better. But it is by Nathan Shively, and it is book one of the Scales of Torma series. It is about 585 pages long. It was published May 15th of 2019. And I made a mistake. So I read this book. It took me about a day and a half to read this book. And I thought it was a fantasy book. And I wasn't entirely wrong, but I was pretty far from being accurate because I got to be honest, it was difficult for me to get through this book. And it's not the book's fault at all. It's not the author's fault. It's no one's fault but mine. Because I was under the impression that I was a target demographic for this book. I thought it was just a regular fantasy book. What I found out after I got done reading it, and I was ready to go. I was like angry. I was so distraught. Like, just this book really, I was so mad at the story and the characters and everything like that because they were so childish and just the things and everything. It really bothered me a lot because I thought it was a regular fantasy book. Come to find out, it's a coming of age teen and young adult fantasy book. So I'm not the target demographic. This book is supposed to be for kids, young kids. It's a phenomenal book if you consider it from that angle. So I felt terrible. I did end up getting it on Kindle Unlimited. I was able to borrow it through my subscription. However, you can get it for $9.99 on ebook, $14.99 in paperback, and $19.93 in hardcover. So that's all cool. All on Amazon, of course, and the link is in the description. So yeah, I was so irritated by this book. I was so mad because of the characters. Everything was so childish, and it was one of those where, you know, the young 18-year-old leads beings with supernatural powers that are hundreds of years old into battle, and they follow him without question because blah, and all this stuff. I was so angry, and then I realized, oh, after the fact, it was like, oh, this is actually a kid's book. I'm dumb. So the fault is completely and totally on me. That being said, as a young adult teen children's book, it hits every single base. It doesn't blow anything out of the water. It doesn't, break new ground or anything in the genre, but it is a solid installment, in my opinion, for children's books. I would say maybe a step or two down from the Harry Potter series, and the only reason I say that is because there's so much more of the Harry Potter series as opposed to just this one book. So maybe if the author finishes the series, which I'm sure he's going to, I don't know. He did reach out and ask me to review this one, but I should have looked at it closer and realized it was a young adult. I would have turned it down. Anyway, past all that, the book itself is about a couple of twins who are basically raised by while their city is under captivity. They've never known anything else other than captivity. The bad guys, the people that have conquered their race and their town, have basically it's pretty horrible. They get beat up all the time. Some horrible things happen. Not too far lines are really crossed or anything. Don't think that you're going to see some Game of Thrones type stuff in this one because it's a kid's book. But mean things are said. They get beat up a little bit. They get taunted. They get bullied. Kid stuff, but it's really well done from a kid's perspective. And so, they're in this amazing glass city because they like to live in the light, and so they don't like to live around things that are, that are going to inhibit the light getting from the sun and all that. But there's this big, iron shield thing that's over their city, and it moves to block the sun for the most part from their city because a lot of their stuff is powered by the sun, and their enemy doesn't want them to be too powered or anything. They can't kill them because if they do, they disappear into mist, go up to this mountaintop where these supernatural scales are, the scales of Torma, and they'll come back as children, as babies, which is bad for some reason. I don't know. It's like I said, it's a kid's book. So of course these two twins, the boy is a young hothead that knows everything and can't be told that he's wrong. The girl is this timid and pacifistic female, you know, regular humanoid in shape and stuff, not a big deal, but just they both know they're destined for so much more. Of course, the young timid female is a love interest for what you are led to believe at first is the big bad guy, the prince of the king that has what is it, occupied their town and defeated them, enslaved, well, not enslaved them, but definitely kind of has conquered their city, has conquered their people. So the prince is there, and he's got control over the city and everything, but he's taking a love interest in her. Something happens after a little while, and they have to escape the city. The prince, of course, is looking for her, and you are led to believe it's because he wants to capture her, bring her back to her dad, and all this other stuff. But of course, it's not. It's a predictable book for an adult because we've seen this before. A child would be on the edge of their seat the entire time reading this book, and that's perfect. That's exactly what this book is all about. There are a few small grammatical errors and stuff like that, and some formatting errors. I read it on ebook type format, so there were some slight formatting, like the paragraphs. A few of them, a bunch of them are too far tabbed over. Not a huge big deal. This book has actually been very well edited. So I can't say that hurt the story for me or anything like that. It is an easy read because it's a kid's book, It's a young adult book. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it's a children's book or anything like that. It's a young adult coming of age book, and it's got a lot of detail in it. The world is very well fleshed out. You get to see the quote unquote good guy city, which is this city of glass and light. And then you see the bad guy city, which is basically a dwarven kingdom, and it's underground because they're ground-based powers and stuff like that. There's many different sects of people. There's the regular, smaller humans called the Tormans, and then there's the people that will grow up to get superpowers, which are the Tormata, and then there's the Gartoon, which is the earth-based powered, superpowered people, and then there's the Rysene, which are the Rain or something like that, which is the people that grow up to get light-based powers. And of course, there's been like 80 different fights against them, a bunch of different wars. But it's weird because all that happens is when one of these superpowered things die, is that their essence gets returned to the scale, and then it comes back as a baby to be raised either as a Gartoon or a Racine, and the cycle continues. It's just this constant circle of stupidity and slaughter. That all being said, there is a middle class of small, like, Tormans, regular people, called waifs. And for some reason in my head, whenever I heard about a waif, I always thought of like a human-sized Smurf, just but kind of scummy. Just that was the gist I got from the waves. And of course they're playing both sides, and while the both sides know that they play both sides, they both trust them and give them really critical information. Like I said, it's a kid's book, so I totally get it, but it frustrated me a lot because I was reading it under the impression that it was not a kid's book. And this channel typically, well, will never again do a young adult or a teen book because I'm not the target demographic for that. It's not going to appeal to me. So because of that, as an adult, this is a 1.5 star out of 5 book. However, for a children's book, for a teen, young adult, coming of age book, if you were looking for something like that, this is a 4.5 out of 5, just with the amount of detail and the exquisite buildings and stuff like that. The author really makes an immersive, lush, vibrant world for a young adult type of book. And it's really well done. It's not for adults. It will frustrate an adult, especially one that's used to reading more, we'll say, adult themed things. It's just a lot of the bad guys, they tend to monologue, they tend to let stupid things happen. The good guys too, because it's from a child's perspective and stuff. So it makes sense why the author would do it like that. It's just, it was such an odd perspective for me to have the entire time I'm reading this book, when in the end I find out, oh, that's why it was all like that. I should have figured it out. I really should have. I'm embarrassed, but I didn't want to waste all that time from reading the book, because once I realized that it was for, teens, young adults type of stuff, or type of audience, it's actually, I realized it's actually a very good book for the audience that's supposed to be reading it. So 4.5 out of 5 for the kids. Definitely, if you've got a teen child that likes to read, get this book for them. The link is in the description. I think they would really enjoy it. So I'm going to play a ad real quick, and then I'm going to get into the spoiler side. So stay tuned. All right, in case you guys didn't already know, I am a self-published author, which is why I'm so passionate about self-published books. It's available on Amazon.com and paperback, Kindle, and Kindle Unlimited. If you're interested, the link's in the description. I'd really appreciate it. Checked out, left a review. So get ready, spoilers are coming up next, so if you're still hearing the music stops, it's your fault. Welcome to the spoiler side of this incredibly interesting book. Like I said, I am going to go from the perspective that it's for a child. I've already, I don't read young adult, I don't read teen because, duh, I'm neither of those. But I don't fault the book for that. I made the mistake. It was my fault that I thought it was something it's not. I wasn't misled or anything like that, so I don't want to keep harping on that. So this book starts off, the two main characters, Loris and Regan, are boy and girls. They're twins, and they came down from a waterfall, which is where all the people come from, 18 years ago, but they don't know that. They're told that they're regular people and that their parents, had them the normal way, whatever that is. They don't actually get into detail with that. Thank goodness, it's a kid's book. And, they've known their whole life basically living in this conquered city by the Gartoon, which are the superpowered Earth bad guys that have captured their city. They, of course, have grown up. Loris, the male, is a hothead, knows everything, is a risk taker, and he's got that fat friend, Tinko, which actually is just a regular kid. He's the smart one. He's the bookworm. He's the class, the teacher's pet and stuff like that. And so he kind of tries to help Loris out. Loris is, of course, ungrateful, a brat. But at the same, you understand why. It's because everybody knows, all the adults know for the most part, that he's a Racine, a superhero version of their kind. But nobody can tell him, because if they tell him and it gets out, then the Gartoon are going to capture him and either kill him or imprison him. And they don't want that because they're, of course, the chosen ones, basically. No, basically about it. Essentially, they're the chosen ones of the family and of the species, and it gets real obvious as you're reading the book that these two kids are much more than just regular townsfolk. With the exception of Tinko. Tinko, the fat guy, he's just the teacher's pet bookworm, and eventually, about halfway through the book, he develops some sort of weird sense of humor that comes out of nowhere. He goes from this skittish, afraid of his own shadow fat dude that just can't wait for where his next meal is going to come, to a comedian with enough courage to taunt bad guys and mouth off to kings. It was an odd character flex, but, again, kids book, got it, okay, things happen. So anyway, the girl Reagan, she becomes the love interest of this guy Xander, who is the Gartoon prince that's in charge of the city that they have under occupation. And for some reason, he has taken interest in this underage teen girl. He comes over to her house all the time, talks to her all the time. Of course, nothing happens until the day that they get their special powers. He's there, and he's had enough talking. He's kind of advancing on her. Not that she doesn't want him to, but she's nervous. She's young. This guy's 4 or 5 years her senior. And, she's 18, but just barely. Like, she turned 18, she thinks 3 weeks ago, but really it was on this particular day. She's talking with this Xander guy, and he's getting closer. It's like, why I'm here. I like you. You like me. Let's make this happen, baby. And it's a little rapey. It's a little rapey, but he doesn't actually touch her. Nothing actually happens because she gets her superpowers. Her eyes start glowing yellow. And the guy is like, "Oh my God, you're one of them!" And at this point, her brother, who already went through the transformation, because timing or not, twins or not, he apparently was washed up first. I'm not really sure how that works. Basically, what happens with them is that after their counterpart dies and turns into mist and returns to the scales, a baby is formed by the gods and sent down a river. And I don't really know when the clock starts at that point because it takes like 2 weeks for them to get down the river and get picked up. Again, it's a kid's book. Anyway, so the twins have to escape. Of course, everybody helps them out, and they're able to get out of the city, and they go on this little mini adventure where they're looking for this guy called Declan. He's a waif, and he's a scumbag. He's a two-faced con artist, and they know that. Everybody knows that. The waifs are not to be trusted. They play both sides. They're only looking in to make a profit. They're not Racine. They're not Cartoon. They're Torments that didn't choose a god. They didn't choose a side, so they live in the forest, and they play both sides against the other. Everybody knows that, yet everybody trusts them. In fact, the mayor of the city that the twins are escaping from gives them a note to give to this guy Declan to tell him basically, yeah, these are the twins. These are the chosen ones of our species. So they of course run through the forest, and who do they run into? None other than Declan. Huge forest, all the world at their disposal, and it just so happens that these three kids out on their own, running towards a forest city they've never been to before. They've never been outside of the city for that matter. They run into this guy that they were looking for. They don't know it at the time because for some reason the waif decides to not tell them that he's him, and he tells them that his name is Lem. So he shows them how to get to this city, Woodhaven, that they're trying to get to in order to find him. He takes them all the way there, shows them the city, but the river's in the way, and then he goes, nope, the entrance is over here. He unlocks this secret passage, and they go down into the secret passage, and they follow him all the way to the hidden sanctuary where all the other light-powered superheroes have been hanging out for 18 years, waiting for the chosen ones to return. Yeah, I know. So they get in there. Of course, they both know that they're the Racine, the light-powered superheroes, and they found all the missing Racine. These guys have been missing for 18 years since they lost the city. So they've been living underground, even though it's super painful and super difficult for them to do that. They do. They all live underground to hide from the Cartoon, who are ground-based animals who should have probably been able to find them rather easy given all the motion and everything. But whatever. The Cartoon just kind of lost interest in looking for him, I guess. So they go ahead and proceed to show these two kids. They show Laura because Reagan is a huge pacifist. She thinks that love and understanding is the key to fixing everything and making the world a better place. And in fairness, she does get mocked for it a little bit, especially by the prince guy, because he comes in and tries to capture them and gets captured himself by the Racine, but he does so because he defends Reagan from his sister, who is following him, in order to try to kill these Racine because they don't want an uprising. Which makes sense, but Xander steps up because he loves Reagan. It's the weird teen angst. Does he like me, or does he just like me? I don't know. It's, like I said, I read the book thinking that it was an adult fantasy, and it turned into a coming-of-age teen young adult book, and so I was very frustrated when I read this book because of what was going on. I know, now that I'm saying it out loud, I really should have figured all this out. I should have. But that all being said, again, Mr. Shively did a wonderful job writing this book for young adults. I think it hits every single mark that it needs to hit, and then some. It does really well. It's got a lot of different locations, a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different colorful characters. They're easy to tell apart. He nailed it. This is going to be a great young adult series. I'm gonna call it now. So anyway, they eventually they teach Loras how to fight. Reagan, they don't really teach anything. Tinko, they call him Tink after a while. He goes there and he likes to mock the Cartoon captives that they have because he's real brave when there's a door. Basically, it's the internet, and Tinko's an internet warrior, which is awesome. Of course, now that the chosen ones are here, they gear up because I guess they couldn't attack the city without those two in their midst. They have all sorts of airships. They have all sorts of weapons. They go forward. And, of course, Declan has betrayed them, and he goes back to the Gartoon, and he tells. Not only does he return Xander's sister, who was half dead, which was actually a pretty cool fight, but she's like she gets hit by an energy weapon and is half dead. But of course, she comes back because we need the finale. And yeah, they go to try to free the city. They get shot. There's a huge battle. Of course, the captain, the guy who's in charge of the racing, dies. And who steps up? None other than Loris, the 18-year-old nobody that hasn't proven himself at all, steps up and leads all of these hundreds of years old racing with the same light powers he has that have proven themselves, that have had 18 years to fight. They all default to this 18-year-old nobody because that's the way it works. That's how life is. I know for a fact that in the military, when there's a major battle, they grab that kid fresh out of high school, throw an M16 in his hand, and say, "Lead us," because you can be taught nothing else. It's even for a kid's book, that's a hard pill for me to swallow. Needless to say, the initial battle goes their way. The leader, Loris, he does get into a fight with the king, who has already been shown to be one hell of a ninja warrior. The kid holds his own for a second or two, and then, of course, gets knocked into the river. He doesn't get hurt. The king just kind of knocks him away into the water. The king should have been able to rip him in 3 or 4 pieces, but we still had 200 pages to go, so that wasn't going to happen yet. Needless to say, though, due to a bunch of great tactical genius by this kid and the tactical failures of every Gartoon that was still in the city, the sister and the fat kid are able to get a couple of energizer-celled solar batteries into the city, basically unmolested, and turn on old cannons that the city hasn't used in 18 years to shoot at the bad guys and push them away. It doesn't win them the battle, but it postpones their slaughter. Because it's 200 Razine versus 1,000 Gartoon. I know. Anyway, so they have decided that they need to take this shield down out of that's blocking the sun from the city in order to get all their defenses up and running, because the solar batteries are only going to last for so long, and everybody knows that. So Loris steps up once again. Nobody else can do it. Loris steps up and decides he's going to attack this boat that's out in the middle of the sea that is basically the control panel thing for the shield that's over the city. Problem is, Loris doesn't know how to swim. Everyone knows that. Every single adult knows that. But since he's the chosen one and he's wearing the solar flare bandana, literally that's a thing, they all just kind of go, well, it'll work out. We'll sit here in the city and wait for you to succeed, because apparently the adults have all read this book already and know how it works out. So he runs off a cliff. It's actually kind of funny. It's a pretty good scene. He goes running off this cliff. He's about to jump out into the sea. He can't swim, never been in the water before in his life. Up until a couple of weeks ago, he'd never been outside the city. He's about to jump off the cliff, and he stops at the last second. That was actually a pretty good scene. But then, of course, he gets embarrassed and goes, "I'd rather be embarrassed than a coward," and throws himself off the cliff into the sea. He can't swim. He's still fully clothed. He doesn't have anything like armor on or anything like that, but he can't swim. He figures it out. He flails around for a minute, a couple of minutes of flailing around, and all of a sudden he knows how to float on his back, he knows how to do the backstroke, and eventually he's a full-fledged Olympic swimmer by the time he reaches this boat. That's a few hundred yards away from where he jumped in the water. Sure, as he's swimming out to this boat, he runs into a water nymph. And the water nymph is friendly, even though it has no reason to be. And you find this out because the nymphs want the boat destroyed because there's a chain that's holding the boat in place so that it can run its route. And the chain has decimated the reef down there. It's been destroying the ocean floor for 18 years. They don't know that Loris isn't the cause of that. But somehow this water nymph just kind of figured he was. So they go and they get the queen of the nymphs to come and help. Loris almost drowns trying to open this lower door or whatever in order to get into the boat. The queen, of course, comes over and makes it so that he can breathe underwater. He gets the door open, jumps inside, and of course the guys on the boat saw him coming. They lock the door behind him, but not before the queen nymph can get in there. I don't know. It's very weird. And they start filling the chamber with water, and he acts like he's scared and stuff, but the nymph is right there. She's not going to let him drown. She can't be drowned. But the Gartoon are apparently really stupid, and there's 5 of them on this whole boat. That's it. There's only 5 of them. So the queen nymph waits for the water to rise up and fill the room. Loris is fine. He can breathe because of the queen nymph. She forces the water to bust down this cage that they're stuck in, this like glass cage they're in, and she takes out all 5 of the bad guys. Like Loris doesn't do anything. Then afterwards, he walks over to the control panel. He hits the off button. Literally, there's an off button. And then he uses his laser sword, because that's the light guys thing. They can make laser swords. He uses his laser sword to just beat the control panels into oblivion. And then they leave. Like, if the queen nymph wanted this to happen for so long, why did she have to wait if she could just do it all herself? He, of course, goes down there and cuts the chain away, the boat motors away, and the queen nymph and 2 of the nymphs swim off, leaving the last nymph behind, the first nymph, to swim back to shore with Loris, where he has his first kiss with the fish person. Little weird, but okay, whatever. Fantasy book, we'll go with that. Young love. Needless to say, now that the shield is away from the city and it's never coming back, the light people are fighting the rock people really well, although now it's just a stalemate. It went from them being able to hold them off to a stalemate after they got their powers back. That part bothered me. I don't care if it's young adult or not. They, of course, are able to eventually defeat the rock people through a series of really fortunate events. Again, childish winnings and stuff like that. And it's discovered that both Reagan and Loris are the king and queen of their people, which gives them extra superpowers that show up at just the right moment. Reagan becomes a Saiyan and starts blasting the bad guys with fire powers and stuff. They capture a bunch of the Gartoon. The king gets away. And when the king gets away, he leaves the city. He's on his own. He's making his way back to his camp so they can retreat back to his town to lick their wounds and wait for the opportune time to attack. Probably when a couple of Gartoon kids show up. I don't know. And Loris is down there. Loris is starting to walk back to the city after contemplating life and kisses and water nymphs and how he feels about that. It's very weird. He knows there's a battle still going on, but he decides to lay on the beach in a while to have a deep thoughts moment. As he's walking back, he runs into Septa, Xander's sister, the psychopath that was trying to kill him before. And although she's been fighting for dozens of years, perfecting her ability and everything like that, and he's literally had a week of on and off training, they go toe to toe, and he kind of gets the upper hand on her at first. And then she goes Kaioken and is able to knock him down, and she's about to kill him. Who shows up but this waif, Declan, to save Loris by knocking her out, because apparently it's really easy to do. And then the king shows up and captures Loris, rescues his daughter, captures the waif. They go back to the king city, the Racine, Reagan, and all them. They know Loris got captured by the king. You don't know how, but they all know that he got captured by the king. They literally do nothing about it. They have things, but no, they do nothing but kind of, oh, I miss him. I miss him too. Don't worry, one day we'll get him back. I swear we will. Ah! And yeah. Meanwhile, Loris is not being abused or tortured because, again, we got to keep that PG rating. He's just sitting in a cell, which is torture in itself because he is away from the sun. I'll give him that. But just mild disconcertness. It's just, oh, darn. He can still focus his power because that's something the waif teaches him how to do. Yeah, if you just imagine it, it becomes real. I gagged a little. The waif, of course, escapes because it wasn't difficult. And then Loris goes and he escapes his cell, but he goes into another cell where an even more superpowered superhero is there. Can be made when a Gartoon and a Racine mate. Yeah, it kind of glosses over all that. You figure that out because Xander and Reagan have been mating. and Reagan is now pregnant, which it should be impossible, which means now they have an Omega. That's what they're called. And the last Omega that they knew about was this guy Hyperion, and of course he's inside of a cell by his own volition, making things for the cartoon. It's just, like I said, kids are going to love this book. Adults are going to get diabetes. So it's not for me. I know it's not for me. And therefore, I want to do a review on this book because as a young adult fantasy book, this is an excellent book. I give it 4.5 out of 5 stars happily because I think both of my sons who are young adult level would love this book. I think they would really get a kick out of it. I think they would enjoy every last bit of it because it is Dark Crystal level fantasy without all the darkness, without any of the sinister, and well, who did love Dark Crystal, but it's I think it would go really, I think it would be perfect in a middle school, high school library, and everybody who picks it up is going to love every single word of this book. I really, really believe that. An adult, on the other hand, is going to vomit a lot in their mouth, and that's the way it's supposed to be because adults, this isn't what this book is designed for. So 4.5 out of 5, and I apologize. I will be sure to verify the genre of the books that I read from now on a lot more closely. Oh, I'm slightly embarrassed. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I did enjoy doing it. I'm mad at myself for not realizing what I was doing, or that the book wasn't for me when I was reading it, and that's not fair to the book nor the author. So I really wanted to give this book a fair shake. 4.5 out of 5 stars is not me being generous. That is 100% true. The reason it's not 5 out of 5 is because there was quite a few times, well, not quite a few, but there were a couple of pivotal points that were just not great. It was too yada yada yada. If you're going to take the time to write an almost 600 page book, then take the time to flesh out everything. Don't yada 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 his training. You're not going to become some sort of ninja master after a week. It's just not going to happen. Yada 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 the battle and stuff like that. Just you really got to flesh it all out. So that's just, like I said, it's a very minor complaint. It didn't happen that often. That's why he lost half a star, though. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints about this one, please feel free to put it in the comment section below. Would love to have a discussion about that. And as always, thanks.